Hey Seth, thanks for joining us today. Thank all you guys for coming too. So very special to announce you got a guest speaker here, Seth Ulinski, Clemson grad alumni, class of 2002, I believe, right, Seth?
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Yes, we'll go with 2002, a little bit that, but that works for me.
There we go. Seth currently works part of ecosystem and growth at Swash, and you'll hear a lot more about that from Seth. But Swash is a Web3 data unitization company. So essentially, if any of you are on your computer now, you can get the Swash browser extension. You get it on your Google Chrome, whatever whatever you use. You plug it in, and you start earning rewards in Swash in exchange for the data that you generate while surfing the web. So it's super deep into Web3, and I'm excited to get started here. And with that being said, Seth, I give the floor to you.
Dynamite. Thank you so much for that intro. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I can say gentlemen because I got an idea of the audience beforehand. So I'm very excited to be here. And yeah, hopefully I can give you some insights into where we are today, where the puck is headed, and tell you a little bit about this project and kind of what compelled me to join the team after working on my own for the past 10 or 12 years. Yeah, so pretty exciting stuff to be able to come back here. So yeah, I'll try and keep the screen shared to a minimum, but I thought just as kind of a backdrop here, we could talk a little bit about Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3. And before I get too deep into the wild world of webs, everything I say here this afternoon or this evening is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So definitely not financial advice, but now that that's out of the way. So yeah, Web 1, I vaguely remember, I might've been in diapers. I kind of kid when I say that, but yeah, largely read only. So a one-way street, if you will, not a lot of interaction. It was pretty much a pull for consumers. And then you had the advent of, being able to like and comments and e-commerce was kind of the big ripple in Web 2. So you have a few of the players from Web 1 kind of doing their thing in Web 2, but definitely a new cast of characters. So Google definitely was in Web 1, Web 2, obviously a power broker, but then you had the rise of Meta or Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, really with tentacles across logistics and e-commerce and advertising and media. It's kind of incredible what that company has done. And as we kind of evolve into Web 3, I think this is where, the kind of common thread between me being a dinosaur from Web 2, but I'm still a digital dinosaur, and kind of connecting with Lou and the Clemson blockchain club here is Web 3. So this notion of decentralization, or in some cases, semi-decentralization, I would say is just as valuable. So I would say fewer intermediaries, no intermediaries. When you say never, that's kind of a strong word. But I'm sure you'll recognize some of the logos here in Web 3. Certainly, Swash is in Web 3. But what's kind of cool is Swash is really a bridge between the two for Web 2 and Web 3. From my seat, just having really dug into Web 2 for pretty much my whole career. So yes, my background, I'm a proud Clemson alum. And I graduated with a degree in Spanish and international trade. So really, I got a view into marketing, economics, and finance. And through, I guess, trial and error, I ended up in the wild world of advertising, and specifically digital advertising. So really cool to kind of see what's going on in Web 1 to an extent, but more so Web 2. Where I think there's a really cool thread if you think about programmatic money within blockchain and Bitcoin, the notion of programmatic media or programmatic advertising, that's been around for about 10 years, coincidentally. So there's probably some cool threads that'll appear as we get into the conversation here. And I do want to make it conversational, so I'll just pause right there in case anybody has any questions before I get into Swash.
You got questions so far? I think you're good, Seth.
Rock and roll. Okay. So if you're online in Web 2, your data is definitely not your income, and probably more important than that, your data is not even your data. So for better or for worse, the companies that kind of set the stage for Web 1 and a little bit of Web 2 here, I don't think they're going to be quite the juggernauts in Web 3, just because of the ownership and agency that Web3 ethos is all about. And this is where Swash really identified an opportunity for consumers to take greater ownership of the data that they create online. So like Lou was alluding to out of the gate, the ability to have a browser plugin that allows you to join what we're calling a data union and share your anonymized browser behavior. That includes search and kind of clickstream data and that sort of stuff. Share it in a pool where, you know, individually my data might not be super valuable to Procter & Gamble or Mercedes-Benz or another brand. But when you start pulling it together with hundreds of thousands and millions of other consumers, then you have a really valuable data asset at your fingertips. And this is where, you know, if you're part of the data union, your data, your income, it would make sense if you're creating this value through your actions online, that you not only get a say in, you know, who's collecting it and analyzing it, but also who monetizes it. So that's where the value proposition of a data union comes in. And yeah, I'll pause there in case anybody has a question before I keep on here. All right. So seeing how we're in a pretty, I would say, DeFi centric club here, the Data Economy Index, this might be a cool report to take a look at if you're curious about the business opportunity when you're looking at a data union and how it kind of plugs into the larger data economy that currently Google and Meta and Amazon are really ruling the roost on, essentially riding on consumer data at the end of the day. So this reimagining data ownership was really fun to put together. Yes, I was the author, so I'm a little bit biased, but you can see the growth in the app, the downloads here. And then for those who are familiar with the Brave or BAT token, so Brave browser and BAT token, they're two different things, of course. But essentially, if you are familiar with BAT in that project, Swash is awesome because it actually complements BAT. So we can, Swash can plug into the Brave browser if you're currently using that. And currently Swash is really just focused on behavioral data. So there's not really a competition here. We're more frenemies, or you're even better than that, I would say, because that's really trying to transform the digital ad ecosystem. So all of the nuts and bolts, whether you're a publisher, you're an advertiser, consumer, they want to kind of reset the entire landscape, where Swash is more of, we're trying to plug into the data economy. So really, you know, part of the Web3 movement, I would say. But in case you're curious about we'll call the data flow here. So starting with the web users on the left, going to the browser plugin, and then you follow the blue dot here. So you're really just creating all of this data that's valuable to a host of different industries and brands and so forth. So really, when we look at the data buyers here on the right-hand side, that could be a brand, it could be a CMO and their media buying team. It could be a market research team looking for insights into consumer behavior. There are hedge funds out there that are super data hungry for consumer actions online. And the fact that Swash can deliver that across any, we'll call it top line domain, that includes Amazon, Facebook, and all of these walled gardens, as a lot of folks in the industry like to refer to them, because you get to put information in and you don't typically get information out. So data union is kind of another way to really just give more opportunity to other participants in the data ecosystem, and especially, you know, being more consumer centric than what's going on today. I'll pause there in case anyone has a question.
Yeah, I have a question actually. I don't really know if this makes sense, but does Swash take more data than would be taken otherwise from a user?
Great question. So no, it's probably a lot of similar data that's already being captured. I'll use the word harvested, and even maybe there's a little bit of data surveillance going on. So there's nothing that Swash is going to collect that isn't already being collected to an extent. So there's no PII or personally identifiable information that's ever going to flow through the app. And yeah, I'll pause there. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
So I got one question also. Is there like a rate of, like I know you get rewarded in the Swash token. Is there like an exchange rate between like, if, I don't know what the right term may be, but 10 megabytes of data gets sold to a buyer? Is there an equivalent amount of Swash token that would be given back to the user? Is there like a formula for that, or is it just kind of subjective? Or
Great question. So currently it's kind of, it's all data, it's all valued the same, but what you just encapsulated very eloquently, I might add, that's where the puck is headed. So if you want to talk a little bit more offline about the white paper, that's in there for sure.
Thank you.
So is there a direct route between the data buyers and the?
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear that one.
So is there a direct line between the data buyers? The data buyers are paying you for your data. Does that money somehow flow to the user, or is the user just hoping that the
Great question. So basically any data buyers are going to buy in Swash tokens, and then right now we have 100% of those proceeds going back to the data union, essentially. So all the token holders, as well as not the token holders, but yes, the app installers, the people that contribute to the data union. Whenever that data is purchased, it's distributed evenly, but it's based on the amount of data. So going back to the first question about the value of all the data, it's pretty much valued the same. But if you and I were, online, say 5 and 10 hours respectively, that is definitely taken into account, if that makes sense.
I got a question. So is the flow of the data between all the entities that are in this diagram, is that traceable on the blockchain, or is that data transfer done with traditional centralized entities?
Yes, the latter. So it is a combination. So when you talk about data management, it's really a team effort. So it's a combination of Ocean Protocol, Streamer. So those are two, I'll say crypto-centric and blockchain-centric entities. But at the end of the day, yes, I think it's a lot more of the traditional. And then where the blockchain component comes in is on the value exchange between the data union contributors and the data buyers.
Sounds good.
Cool.
So is it sorry, I didn't mean to go in late, but is it the data buyers basically when they're purchasing the collected data through Swash token? So they're the ones who are driving the value of the token itself up, correct? That's
correct. Although there are some incentives for the community as far as if you're getting into like the tokenomics ultimately and the value proposition of why I should hold on to a token for 3, 6, 9 months, for example. So there's the buying, the commercial aspect, and then there's the burn that's part of the tokenomics that I can kind of touch on here as well. All right. So as far as how we're kind of driving forward and growth and so forth, this is a movement. So Web3, Swash and Web3 are definitely cut from the same cloth, and then the ethos of the greater ownership and transparency and monetization of consumer data. So they kind of go hand in hand here. And we just literally launched this today. So kind of good timing for anybody that's interested in kind of learning more about Web3, helping Swash. We've got this top 200 token goal by the end of this year, and all of the different aspects of, I come from the advertising world, so I refer to it as a brand ambassador. But at the end of the day, it's if you believe in the program, if you're interested in Web3 and kind of this data economy that's more consumer centric, where consumers have more ownership and agency and so forth. It's going to be a fun program. It's actually part of this 12-month initiative. We have a DAO ignition. So I heard some chatter before we kicked off here about NFTs and that sort of thing. So I'm imagining that DAOs have come up in conversation within the club here. So for those who aren't familiar with DAO, it's a decentralized autonomous organization. And if you think about Swash's data union, this is really the other side of the same coin, if you will, where the DAO is essentially all the data union contributors having ownership of the data union and governing it. And, that includes commercial opportunities, how it behaves, because it is a business entity. There are a lot of aspects to it, which, to be candid, some of them go above and beyond me, but suffice to say, it's a really cool initiative. And of course, there are different reasons for joining a DAO. Here, you register your wallet, you get entered in this, it's a $300,000, or I should say 300,000 USDT grand prize. And that's based on entrance. So once Swash hits a certain minimum threshold of entrance, that 300,000 USDT kicks in. And in addition to that, there is some token burn incentives along the campaign, which again is 12 months. Early bird member, that speaks for itself. But then if you're into charities and philanthropies, and I know Clemson, when I was there, at least within my fraternity, I got to kind of participate in different philanthropies, and that was a pretty cool thing to do. So 100,000 USDT goes to a charity once Swash triggers this 300,000 USDT grand prize. So again, this is just a building block for the project, and really, really excited. I got to kind of draft a lot of this here. So if anybody's interested in Web3 or Swash or this notion of data unions, happy to continue the conversation. And then that's my end slide, gentlemen. So yeah, thanks for the airtime here, and look forward to chatting some more.
I have a question I'd like to start with.
Yeah. Seth, so how did you might have, I stepped in just after you started, but how did you get connected with the company? And, can you tell us a little bit about your journey there?
Definitely. No, awesome question. Thanks. So yeah, I had really been covering Web 2 companies for the past 10 years within my consultancy. And when you run your own shop, and as I was doing consulting work and kind of market research analysis work, part of my job is to study the market and look at trends. So when coming from an advertising background, I started to study some of the movements and trends around big tech and cookies kind of going the way of the dodo bird, and greater agency and control of consumer data, and data legislation in the European Union and stuff going on in the States here. I said, wow, the whole movement for Web3 is very compelling. And yeah, I actually added Swash as a client initially, and I was working with a massive Fortune 500 IT vendor. And now, I cut ties with them to focus on Swash, and one thing led to another. So that's the story. And yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit in more detail. Just let me know.
I had a question, Seth. Could you possibly go into a little bit of depth with regards to in Web 2, kind of how your data is monetized, and really how it's so unbeknownst to the user, and how they're so left out of that whole process. So could you kind of go into depth about that a little bit?
Definitely. Yeah. So anytime you're within your app, or you sign in, if you're on your PC or desktop, what have you, all of the actions that you're conducting, they're all signals. And really in Web 2, once you had that Gmail login, or you logged into YouTube, for example, or Twitter, there's just an ongoing trail of breadcrumbs, if you will. They're digital breadcrumbs that can be analyzed and monetized, and not just monetized once or twice, but you can see your same data set like sold multiple times. So this is all largely through cookies and so forth. But yeah, like with Apple iOS, that automatically turns off third-party cookie tracking out of the gate. So that was just kind of hatched recently, which really impacted Meta's revenues. And you're going to start to see similar things happen with the current Web 2 landscape, where Google, within its ridiculously massive ad platform, is going to stop supporting third-party cookies. So that's where first-party data or zero-party data, which is ultimately where Swash is making its mark with its data union. That's kind of where the opportunity is going to be moving forward. If you want to understand consumer behavior across the web, it's already complicated. It's going to get more complicated, is essentially what's happening here.
Thank you.
You're
I have
welcome.
a question. Do you have to earn like a minimum amount of Swash in order to like withdraw? And what like withdrawal options do you support? Like Coinbase Wallet, MetaMask?
Cool. Yeah. Shame on me. I believe it was 20 Swash minimum. It might be 10 in order to remove from your wallet. But I also know that we just started supporting Polygon recently. So that, of course, negates a lot of those ugly gas fees. So yeah, suffice to say, it's becoming a lot more flexible, but I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks.
And y'all are already on the Gnosis layer as well?
Yes.
Anyone else got another question?
I got another question. So I'm really interested in your summer ambassador program. So would you be willing to give a more detailed timeline about like when that would start and when that would end?
Absolutely. I mean, it could start, tomorrow if you were really interested. And yeah, I mean, it's completely kind of, I'll say dynamic or on demand for the ambassador. So if you have the credentials and the interest and so forth, and you want to make a go of it, yeah, it can be a month-to-month program for you.
Okay. So if I want to apply to that, where would I go to apply?
Well, you can kind of go through, I'm happy to share some of these pieces of info afterwards. But yeah, in this right up here on Medium, it includes a link to the application for the program.
Okay.
Yes.
I put that in our Discord too after this.
Yeah, and by all means, feel free, anyone that wants to have a conversation, shoot me an email, or you can reach out to me through Twitter, whatever flavor you like. My name, I think I'm the only one with my name, and said I was one of a kind. I think I still am. So yeah, happy to connect on whatever channel makes sense.
Seth, are any Web 2, you mentioned like the juggernauts in Web 2. How are some of those companies adapting to Web 2, to Web 3? And do you think there are any plans in the future perhaps for like the Metas and the Googles to adopt a data unionization model similar to Seth or Swash's? Excuse me.
Hey, Swash Seth, I go by that too. That's cool. Yeah, great question. So it's an opportunity. Unfortunately, I think big tech tends to focus on the profit, and there's a time and place for that, and that's cool. So we're not necessarily competing with them, but if they ever wanted to leverage some of our best practices or tools, that will be an option. And I see that happening probably sooner with large publishers that are really kind of frenemies with the big tech players. Because a data union, you can really, if you have a sizable audience, I think it would make sense to white label or license a data union platform in the future, just so you have that scale, being able to kind of message to your audience across the web instead of just on your site or just on your app, which is pretty much where things are headed right now.
Gotcha. Thank you. Answered my question.
Cool, you're
So I
welcome.
know that you guys are mostly into browsing, but do you have any compatibility with like phones? Like being able to track across like apps on your phone?
Yeah, that's awesome question. So that's certainly on the roadmap. Mobile is, upwards of 90% of we'll call it the digital opportunity. So suffice to say, yeah, mobile is happening this year, and yeah, we're stoked about that add-on, if you will.
Seth? Sorry, go ahead.
What determines the supply of Swash? Is it the amount of data you collect?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. It's a little bit of duration, but also the number of activities. So like with clickstream data, it's, you do a search, you visit a site, you visit a second site, a third site. So each one of those activities is a data point, if you will, and then that all just kind of adds up, and that aggregate is ultimately what you're creating and what you're contributing, and then you're able to get your rewards based on that, and that's every 48 hours that's updated.
So do the rewards represent new Swash tokens that are created, or are they allocated for something else?
Yeah, so there are two different pieces. So there's the data, and I don't know offhand what the conversion is, because I'm not a developer, but yes, there's a conversion that happens that says, okay, 0.876 data equals 1 Swash token, and so forth.
So and then the end buyers have to buy the Swash concern in order to buy the data. Is that correct?
Oh, I'm sorry, would you mind repeating that?
So you said that the buyer of the data pays for it in Swash, is that correct?
Yes,
So they would first have to buy Swash.
correct.
So ultimately, they're gonna be buying from the person. Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
Or can they buy it through an exchange?
They'll buy it directly from Swash, but yeah, well, we're obviously going to make it as seamless as possible for buying. And what's great is you have platforms like PayPal and others that are just, they're bridging that gap between Web 2 and Web 3. So yeah, it's not going to be a super big challenge. I think you're going to see a pretty seamless flow of revenue once it starts.
So does Swash act as its own data marketplace where data buyers can, visit, and then they would have to buy a Swash token, your guys' own data place?
Great question. So first and foremost, yes, Swash is doing its own thing. So we're building through our first wave solutions platforms that data buyers can come into and buy directly. But we're also partnering with marketplaces. So yeah, there's going to be multiple commercial opportunities from that standpoint, where we'll join like big data protocols, one integration that Swash has, and that is a data marketplace. So it includes Swash as well as like IoT data and other data sets.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seth, are there any, if someone gets rewarded in Swash, and let's say they keep it kind of in their browser extension, if you build up a certain, amount of Swash, are there any incentives for governance or anything like that on the roadmap or currently implemented?
Great question. Yeah. So the Swash DAO Ignition campaign, that is all about that stepping stone to being a formal DAO. But currently, yeah, so you can stake, you can of course, transfer your tokens to other wallets or other cryptocurrencies. We're building out a donation channel as well. So yeah, there's a bunch of different options. And in the future, NFTs and those other sort of things, you'll be able to kind of flip and transfer within the wallet. So yeah, it's going to be fun seeing where it goes. I hope that answers your question though.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
When Swash was launched, how did it get funding? How did it start?
Great question. So I believe initially it was, there are roughly, I want to say it was about $4 million that he raised initially, and then they had the IDO separate from that. But yeah, I was not part of the fundraising initiatives, but suffice to say, Swash raised, I believe, about 17 million to date.
Was it like venture funded or was it an ICO or how did you?
Both. So, you know, it's interesting. You kind of mentioned two at the same time. So Outlier Ventures is an investor in Swash, and they're probably, if not the first VC that got into cryptocurrency and blockchain-based solutions. They're one of the first. So that is one of our partners that I would kind of lean on when somebody says, "Who's invested in you?" So Outlier Ventures is probably the top dog.
Any other questions? I think that should wrap it up. Thank you, Seth, honestly, for speaking with us. I think I certainly learned a lot. I think I probably speak for most of people who showed up tonight. So thank you for your time, and certainly look forward to connecting again here in the future.
All right, dynamite. Hey guys, I really appreciate it. As an alum, you dream about these days. So I hope I got to give a little bit back. And by all means, if anybody has questions or I can help you out, and it doesn't even have to be Web3 or crypto related, I'm happy to make connections and introductions and that sort of thing. So take care, gentlemen. Thanks again.
Thanks, Seth. Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, it's turning blue.
But that wraps it up tonight, y'all. So thank you guys for coming. And thank you guys for asking questions and everything.